He was a little guy, he took steel guitar lessons, and we still had the guitar, and we'd give it to Kurt. But the amplifier didn't work right, and he finally, I guess, just tore it all up to see what it was made of. And he'd always pounding on pots and pans, beating them all. We always thought he'd be a drummer instead of a guitar.
Because Kurt and I both were in school, especially at that age, were really small in stature. And to see him carrying that big snare drum in a case around was, it was kind of funny. But then just to hear him play that and beat on it, you knew right then that he was musically talented. And as we got older, like the high school, when he was in band, we'd maybe have another class like PE that was close to the band room, and you'd hear this drum playing. I mean, someone just beating the drums like you can't believe, it sounded like a rock drummer, so, people would actually go to the band room, they'd hear this and you'd just follow the sound, and, here's Kurt on the drums, just going for it like between classes or something, and, right then I was like, wow, I figured he'd grow up to be a drummer,
Kurt's obvious affinity for the drums made his family and friends think he would become a famous drummer. But instead, his musical interest moved towards the guitar.
When I first saw Kurt play the guitar, we must have been like 15 at the time. He may have played some before that, but, probably kind of a closet player maybe as he was getting good, and you could tell that every time you saw him, he must have practiced an awful lot, because he got better fairly quickly. From going from that time period when he was just learning how to play the guitar and just growing up around this area, I don't think anybody ever envisioned how big he would become. It was very amazing to see him progress, and yeah, you don't know what kind of expectations to have for that person, at the time. Even knowing they're so talented, it's, especially when they get as big as Nirvana got, very, no, I don't think anybody could have predicted that.
Krist Novoselic was born in California, but moved to Aberdeen after his parents too were divorced. At 6'7" and of Croatian descent, Krist was impossible to miss around Aberdeen. He started his lifelong friendship with Kurt after being introduced by a friend, Jesse Reed. Jesse, Kurt and Krist all played the guitar together, running through the usual Kiss and Led Zeppelin covers. Nothing emerged from these initial sessions, except a close and loyal friendship. Little did they know what the future would hold for them. On moving back from Montesano High School to his new school, Weatherwax in Aberdeen, Kurt hooked up with classmates Steve and Paul, who shared his love of heavy metal.
I looked over and there's this other kid that I recognized, a little blonde guy, sitting next to me. And I could tell he wasn't in the 12th grade. And he had Motorhead written on his peachy with all the other bands of the day, Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and such. And I said, "Hey, you like Motorhead?" And he opened his peachy and he had all these cutout pictures of different bands, guitar players. He had a picture of Lemmy Kilminster from Motorhead flipping off a Ronald McDonald statue. And I said, "Hey, that's awesome." And from then on, we hung out quite a bit. And he eventually began living at my house, and he lived with me for about 8 months. He'd go see his mom quite often. She always knew where he was. He just didn't want to live by their rules.
There were virtually no opportunities for Kurt economically in Aberdeen. I mean, he considered joining the military because that was one of the only job prospects. He worked for a while washing dishes at a, resort-type restaurant that was even down on its luck, and he took a job at the YMCA teaching kids how to swim. But none of these were jobs that paid more than minimum wage, and I was able to get a copy of Kurt's resume in the context of doing my book, and it was hilarious because he listed his employment, and it was pitiful.
The young Kurt and his friends steered well away from heavy-duty drugs, but like most of their peers, smoked pot and sniffed gas.
There was a time when, you know, like in 9th grade, we were, you know, pretty disrespectful at times, you know, just being normal teenagers. And one time, he had asked me if I wanted to go outside of the school and smoke some pot with him. And, you know, at the time I thought, yeah, why not, you know, so let's go. And I thought we'd go hide somewhere to do it. Well, I followed him right out to the very front of the school and behind like a big rhododendron bush. I mean, it was probably about the stupidest thing you could do. But of course we do it, and he gets away with it, you know. And of course he thinks it's great, and you know, it was it was ballsy to do it, and it was also just kind of like, you know, he was showing that, you know, he would do things like that, and how, you know, anti-authority he was.
We were really, 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 really heavy drinkers and heavy substance abusers at really young ages, and Kurt was too. He made this big apparatus to huff isobutane out of the bottom of Ed's shaving grid gel, and he declared himself addicted to Ed's shaving gel at one point.
At the age of 16, and not being able to settle at either of his parents' or friends' homes, Kurt got his own house, a move he was immensely proud of.
It was a horrible little house, but he was really proud of it. I remember that he was really hurt because he showed it to his mom, who didn't live that far away at the time, and she said that she didn't like the idea of her son living in a run-down shack. And it really hurt his feelings because he was really proud. This was his house, you know. He was very possessive of it. My house, you know, it's not a crummy apartment, it's a house, and it was like a little 2-bedroom thing that he lived with Luke in.
He applied for a job cleaning dog kennels, essentially, you know, washing down dog feces, and he was deemed not qualified for that job. So you really have to say, if you're not qualified to clean up dog crap, what are you qualified for? He worked as a janitor briefly. He eventually was fired from that job. He was not a very diligent, hard worker for the most part, but there was very little opportunity for him in any context.
Kurt would buy pounds of potatoes, and he had this scummy old dress shirt that he would use to soak the grease out of them, and they'd live on French fries. And one day we were there, and we were high on acid, and Kurt decided he was going to make a lava lamp. He said he knew how.
I remember
and,
that.
He put a